We're back. There was a time when Republicans thought they had the inside track in the battle for control of the U.S. Senate. And one of their sure things was beating Democrat Claire McCaskill in Missouri. Then Todd Akin won the Republican primary. He started talking about legitimate rape, and his poll numbers collapsed. Now, despite the Republican Party's best efforts, Todd Akin's staying in that race. So how's he doing? This is what Akin's website looked like yesterday morning. It says, quote, "I'm a women." That's how they pronounced it, and that's how they spelled it. I'm a women, plural, for Todd Akin. And one woman pictured there is actually a Democratic tracker. She's been following the campaign for Claire McCaskill for months. And here's what the Republican replaced it with. It says, "Missouri women standing with Todd Akin." Well, there they are standing, but there's no Todd Akin in that picture, who's not even pictured. With me now is the Washington Post Dana Milbank and Roll Call's Shira Toeplitz. This is really interesting. First to you, Dana. I love your column in the Post because you have an attitude that's very similar to mine about some of these people. Why is this guy still able to walk before a camera and say, "I want to be a United States Senator"?
Well, first of all, I love the idea that he has a Democratic woman in his campaign photo there, because, of course, Democrats are the one most enthusiastic about him remaining in the race, because he's the one likeliest to hand the seat right back to them. You know, this is maybe the luckiest man alive, because he had this horrible scandal, looked like he was going down, then the conventions came, and now Mitt Romney's in trouble. Well, you know what? That's the bigger distraction for the Republicans than what's happening in Missouri. All eyes are off him. The Democrats are laying low. They don't want to bring this thing up again until they hit the 25th, when he has to stay on the ballot. Then all kinds of hell is going to be unleashed on him.
Shira, just to remind everybody, this is the guy who speaks in a way that is so condescending toward women that even he seems to be suggesting a woman who has to go through the hell of reporting not only going through a rape, which is always, has been in the past a capital crime, but then has to report it to the police with all that involves, saying that that woman is somehow to be suspected on the face of it, because only legitimate rape should be talked about, not those other great oceans of false testimonies. That guy is still in the race when he thinks like that about people who make up more than half the electorate, the women?
Well, he's still in the race because he won the primary. Republicans had other choices in the primary. It was a three-way race, and he won it, and he can continue to stay on the ballot. The official date is the 25th. That's Tuesday, as you mentioned, but actually it might be a few days earlier than that, because officials need to start printing military ballots. So the clock is winding down, and we've had no indication. We've talked to his aides today. Roll Call has talked to his aides today, rather. Todd Akin staying in the race. He's not getting out.
What role has Reince Priebus, the head of the Republican Party, played in this? Has there been any effort from the leadership, from Cornyn down to the head of the Senate Campaign Committee? Have they really tried to shoo him out of this race or not?
They did everything they could, which was pull the money, right? National Republicans, John Cornyn, the NRSC, even Crossroads pulled their ad buys initially after Todd Akin made those comments that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The National Republicans, John Cornyn's Senatorial Committee says they're going to stay out of the race. They're now Crossroads says they're going to stay out of the race. I find it hard to believe National Republicans would even consider going back into the race, given how much Todd Akin has now started to run against them and the bad things he said about them to try and raise money.
Imagine something that smells so bad that Karl Rove gets away from it. Anyway, one struggling Senator Claire McCaskill is now ahead in the Missouri Senate race. She leads Akin by 5 points. Dana, that's not exactly a badge of honor to only be beating that sort of political skunk by 5 points. I mean, this guy is just unacceptable nationally, and she's only got 5 on him. What are these people down in Missouri thinking about?
Well, what I think is going on here, Chris, is that McCaskill has not been making a big issue of this, as I was saying, because of all people, she wants him to remain in this race until there's no possibility of him being replaced on the ballot. And thanks to Newt Gingrich getting him money, sending him staffer, so it does look like he's going to stay in the race. After that is when the barrage takes place, and I think that's when you see those poll numbers diverge again. I mean, we're not talking about Alabama here, this is Missouri.
Here's what his wife said in an interview with the National Journal this weekend about pressure on her husband to get out of the race. Quote, "Party bosses dictating who is allowed to advance through the party and make all the decision. It's just like 1776, and that columnist rose up and said, 'Not in my home. You don't come in and rape my daughters and my wife.'" But there they go again. I mean, what do you make of this, Shira, that she's using the word rape, which got her husband in the trouble he's in?
I make of it that they're not backing down. I mean, Todd Akin, at first he kind of apologized for his comments, but then he, said, I'm staying in the race. He stood by them. And I think by very virtue of staying in the race, he's in a way kind of sticking by them. Look, this Senate race is still going to be a little bit competitive, slightly. So Claire McCaskill right now is ahead by 5 points, as you mentioned. That's because the president is so unpopular in Missouri, right? The presidential race has
thanks so much, Dan Novak, and thank you, Shira Toeplitz, for joining us from Roll Call. When we return, let me finish with Mitt Romney redefining that word, redistribution. It's a terrible word. You're watching Hardball for the Place for Politics.